Welcome everyone. My name is Judy and I'm the Research and Development Coordinator with Liebe Group. Today we're going on a virtual field walk to a trial that is part of the Optimising Plant Establishment, Density and Spacing to Maximise Crop Yield and Profit in the Western and Southern Regions project. The project is being led by WANTFA and is funded by GRDC. And now I'm going to hand over to Dave Minkey, the project lead, who's going to talk a little bit about its background and progress so far.
The trial was, the project was basically a GRDC tender they put out for crop establishment. I think one of the biggest investments we have is trying to get the crop in and up, particularly with the dry starts we're having. So the project's pretty well based around, but there's two facets to it. One was crop establishment, to try and find out if we can set up our seeders better. So seeder setups to try and get a higher percentage of your crop germinated. And the second part was looking at singulation. So we've got some precision planters Australia-wide. We're working with a machine in Tamman, Brad Jones' place, looking at singulation. So the theory there is evenly spaced plants, higher productivity, so they're not competing with each other for moisture, nutrients and light. So those trials have been going on for the last 2 or 3 years now. And when we first started the project, we also did a survey. So the survey was 100 growers in West Australia, which yourselves, Libby, us, WANTFA, BASI and CFIG carried out. So based on that, we sort of determined that lupins and canola were the two species that were suffering the most from germination or lack of germination, particularly with the early dry seeding opportunities we're having. So this is where you guys come in. The whole idea was to using farm machinery in a large scale kind of setup and have a look at what we can do to the machine to change it to try and improve that germination. So we're looking at things like seeding depth, speed, quite interesting, come up, quite important. So speed, depth, press wheel pressures, seeding rates, and a bit of time of sowing. So into looking at marginal versus wet sowing kind of conditions. We're basically collating trials like that Australia-wide. So we're in West Australia, we're more focused on that seeder setup, where the eastern states are more focused on the singulation. So that's basically the background of the trial. So it's run by the University of South Australia, and so we're basically in West Australia. The 4 grow groups are basically managing it from this end.
This project's been running for 3 years now, or it's in its 3rd year now. What sort of learnings have you discovered so far?
Yeah, canola and lupins are pretty poor establishers in marginal moisture. I think we all know that. But interesting enough, it's the seeder setups story is interesting. Some years we're getting a response to certain things, and other years like this year we're getting no response. So we're either getting fantastic germination, which I presume your trial was like, or we've had really atrocious germination. And we've, with my trials in Tamman, looked at seeding depth, seeding rate, speed, and in BASI and Libby had similar trials with press wheel pressures, and we all had terrible establishment. So none of those treatments worked. We had conditions where we had marginal moisture, a bit of moisture at depth, then we had about 7-8 mil of rainfall, and then nothing for a week. So the seed death, we're assuming a seed death with canola, was pretty sensitive. So one of the learnings I think we're seeing is that, particularly with canola, we need something else to try and protect that seed from that fatal germination scenario. Seeder setups still important in some years. We see by shallow seeding in particular with canola, and seeding slower too, to try and get more precise placement of the seed was helping a lot last year. A tricky year like this, I suppose another learning would be warning signs about when are good conditions to seed. Canola in early April, no follow-up rain forecast is a very risky proposition. High reward, but can be high risk. So I think we're a bit of work to do in that area, trying to figure out how we're going to safeguard that canola seed. I'd like to see a bit more of this seeder setup work done in varying moisture conditions, so we can get growers set up fairly early next year, and then basically try and come in marginal and dry sowing and into wet sowing, so we can get a time of seeding with all these things, parameters we're looking at. It's a bit tricky, I know, with the farmers. They've got their time poor. But if somehow we can investigate the relationship between moisture and germination with seeding depths, for example, I think that's going to be fairly critical. And I think they're doing some more intensive research through CSIRO and DPERD on canola establishment. So tee up with those guys and maybe have similar trials within the same paddocks. So we can have CSIRO and DPERD doing trials in the same paddocks the farmers are. The other thing we're trying to do set up is a workshop into seeder setups. So one of the key things we can do to seeders to make sure they're operating correctly and seeding correct depth and so on. And we might even do some evaluation on distribution of emergence across the bar, to try and see how even the seeds are coming out for each time. I think that kind of sort of assessment of your seeder before seeding is quite essential. With the singulation work, we're still persevering with that. What we're finding with the singulation work is that we're getting a good yield response at very low seeding rates, but none once the seeding rate gets a certain level. So for valuable seed like canola hybrid, we might be a place for the singulation. So we're hoping to try and do a bit more work in that space. And the other thing we're having problems with is in Western Australia, we don't think the disc version of the singulation is going to work that well, or not work that well. We don't think it'll be adopted that highly because there's not many discs. So we're trying to work with Brad's Tine machine to try and get that working a bit better. So we're making slow steps in that one. So yeah, it'd be interesting what the Eastern States guys get up to too. They're going whole hog into really low seeding rates with their singulation. And there's also another machine, an intermediary machine, which is not quite a singulator. It's next step down from that, but see if we can come up with a system that's a bit more durable and easy to use. So hopefully we can achieve all that next year. We'll see how we go.
Thanks, Dave. That was great. Now let's head out to the trial. I'm here today with Stuart McAlpine, whose property this is. Would you like to introduce yourself, Stuart?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Stuart McAlpine. I farm here at Buntine with my wife, Leanne. We have about 5,000 hectares and we crop wheat and canola, lupins, a bit of barley and run some beef cattle as well.
So, Stuart, do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with the trial and how it was to implement?
Sure, yeah. No, well, I was purchased a new disc seeder this year, a Horsch no-till Pronto, 12 metres, and we're able to obviously operate at quite high speeds with a disc machine. So when I was approached by the Liebe Group looking at doing some speed versus rate trial, I was really excited to do this trial work, and it probably forced me to stretch the boundaries a bit. I mean, I grow just normal canola, so normally my normal sowing rate's around sort of 3 kilos per hectare, so it was good to sort of stretch those boundaries. We couldn't stretch them as much as we'd hoped to initially because of the seed roller and we would have had to change 2 rollers, but we got some good rates out, and probably didn't quite get as high a speed as what we like because we couldn't get the liquid fertiliser at the same rate, but we ended up with a pretty nice little trial, I think.
Yeah, I think we did. So for this trial, we were looking at 3 different speeds, 12, 15 and 18 kilometres an hour, 2 different seeding rates, 2 and 4 kilometres an hour, and then looking at the effects that has on plant density, establishment and distribution. We've had some really interesting results.
Yeah, and it was really good to do, and nice big long strips in this paddock. I think this paddock's 1.4 kilometres long, so it was good to have some nice big runs and be able to set it up and do some replicates across the paddock. So hopefully we'll end up with some interesting results. This trial is really good because I guess it enabled us to look at some of the productivity at higher speeds and lower seeding rates, because obviously seed costs can come in, if you're looking at using hybrid or some of the new Roundup Ready technologies. So it was good to be able to do that because, we saw, a lot of crops germinate early this year. So to be able to know what you can achieve with higher speeds and lower rates to increase your productivity might enable us to delay our sowing a little bit to make sure that we get in a safer window for germination. So, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I bought the disc machine is, we're having to plant so often a fair proportion of our crop dry. So if we can get the job done faster, then we can perhaps at least buy ourselves a bit bigger window so we can try and get some weed control as well. So, and I've been really happy with the results. The weed control generally has been quite good. The disc machine is at 8-inch spacings, and it actually has a leading coulter in front of it that actually is what they call a wavy coulter, so it has waves in it, and it actually throws a reasonable amount of dirt, which allows us to get some throw back onto some of the trifluralin and some of the herbicides to be able to use them in the system. So it has actually worked really well. So and I'm basically using all liquid fertilizers now as well, using some biological type fertilizers in my system to try and sort of get the plant health going, and actually saw some pretty interesting results with some plus or minus biostimulants around this trial as well. So so it's there's a lot of great technologies, and it's good to be able to to put them through some rigor with a trial like this that's been funded to look at some of these different systems as they evolve. So really good, great to be part of it.
And we're pretty lucky the site is quite clean, very few weeds across any of the plots, and no sort of correlation between the treatments and weed numbers, which is great to see. As you would expect, the higher seeding rates do have on average a higher plant number, but we do have one anomaly. At the 15 kilometre an hour speed, we actually have a lower average plant count. We're not quite sure what's caused that. It may just be chance that we've hit some old run lines or something similar to that, but we're hoping when we get some more information at the end of the year with NDVI readings, it'll be a little bit more clear why this has occurred.